middle powers must act together, because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
Somewhere Europe has to grow out of the mindset that Europe's problems are the world's problems, but the world's problems are not Europe's problems.
चुन चुन करके हिसाब लेना ये मेरी फितरत है.
Why should it be a problem? If I'm smart enough to have multiple options, you should be admiring me.
भारत झुकने वाला भी नहीं.
The rise of India will be determined by India. It will be determined by our strength, not by the mistakes of others.
The old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy.
Hey guys, welcome to my channel. And in this video, we are going to talk about India-US Energy Alliance. For the first time in nearly 50 years, United States is preparing to build a major new oil refinery. And this is very, very big news, okay? And this refinery will be built in where? Brownsville, Texas, with investment from India's Reliance Industries, the largest privately held energy company in India. Now, this announcement actually comes as a global energy market faces Middle East instability, then sanctions, wars, supply chain fragmentation, and we are looking into de-dollarization. Lots of players are there who are talking about de-dollarization, trading in national currencies. All these things are happening. In fact, the problem is so severe right now in the Middle East that some are threatening that US-led system, petrodollar system, is done. But the real question is that, is it really done? What exactly is going on and all that? So we're going to talk about all these things in this video, okay? So stay with me till the end. This is going to be very important video, guys, all right? I have made pretty much lots of videos, but all those videos have their own importance. But this video is going to teach you or tell you about how this whole entire supply chain is going to be reset. The whole energy game as you know it, and I can guarantee you that the whole energy game as you know it is going to entirely change. Okay, it's going to completely change, and I'm going to tell you all that in this video. So stay with me till the end. Let's get it going. Let's talk about it. Please do like and subscribe. And first of all, let me get to the point straight up. So President Donald Trump basically just few days ago announced a major deal. Okay, he said that America is, one second. Okay, what happened here? Never mind, what's going on? So what he's saying is that America is returning to real energy dominance. Today, I'm proud to announce that America First Refining is opening the first new US oil refinery. America First Refining is opening the first new US oil refinery in 50 years in Brownsville, Texas. So basically, this is a joint venture, all right? This is a historic $300 billion deal, the biggest in US history, a massive win for American workers, energy, and the great people of South Texas. Thank you to our partners in India and their largest privately held energy company, Reliance, for this tremendous investment. It is because of our America First agenda, streamlining permits and lowering taxes that have attracted billions of dollars in deals coming back to our nation. A new refinery at the port of Brownsville will fuel US markets, strengthen our national security, boost American energy production, deliver billions of dollars in economic impact, and will be the cleanest refinery in the world. It will power global exports and bring thousands of long overdue jobs and growth in a region that deserves it. This is what American energy dominance looks like. America first, always. So that's what President Trump is saying. And then also, if you look at it, then Reuters also made this announcement. Reuters says that Trump announces a new oil US refinery backed by India's Reliance. Now, what Reuters is doing is Reuters is actually providing some more data. So let's look at some of that stuff, okay? And then we will get back to our thing. So the data is that 168,000 barrels per day refinery will be built at the port of Brownsville and will offset $300 billion in trade deficit with India. Startup America First Refining said, okay, this is America First Refining is the company name. This company is actually working in collaboration with Indian company Reliance Industries, okay? And what they're saying is that they are doing it, this whole thing will offset $300 billion in the trade deficit with India. The reality of this whole thing is that India and US do not even have $300 billion of trade. Their total trade is $132 billion, okay? And trade deficit is just $40 billion. All right. So I don't know how much of this is accurate here, the $300 billion offset part, but 168,000 barrels per day is, it seems to be believable. Okay. Now another important part, I'm not going to read the whole entire news here. Okay, but here's the thing. A global major, a global super major has provided a nine-figure investment, meaning that it will be in million barrels plus per day. Nine-figure investment, that's $1 billion, 300 billion something something. Okay, 10-figure valuation, at a 10-figure valuation, America First said. Okay, so meaning that 10-figure valuation, meaning that they are going to invest this and they're going to return of investment out of it into 10 billions. Okay, 10 figures. So you can do the calculation. What does that say? Okay, now, so the numbers, all that is fine. Now let's get into another important stuff here. Okay, US refineries are the major suppliers of motor fuel, heating, this Closa said, and have lower cost of natural gas. And let's see what develops. He said Reliance is a very successful company. Reliance operates at 1.4 million barrels per day refining complex in Jamnagar, India, which is the largest in the world. The firm, which reported 125 billion in revenue last year, just last year revenue was 125 billion dollars, also operates businesses in retail, new energy, digital service, media and entertainment. Since late 2025, two California refineries they have shut down, citing the state's regulation of fossil fuel industries. The cost of construction of refineries or additions to refineries in the past decade has averaged $40,000 per barrel of capacity, or about $6.7 billion for 168,000 barrels, which means that that's what it will cost. Okay, so $300 billion is a multi-year plan, which is like 10 years or more than that. Okay, now US refining capacity was 18.4 million barrels per day at the end of 2024, and then this is set to grow through gradual increase in capacity in 2030s. Okay, so this number is going to grow. So that's where we are at with this news. Now there's another important aspect actually I wanted to show you in this news, is that this part. If Brownsville is indeed the location for the build, I would assume that they are looking at an export refinery, Closa said. Okay, there is not much local demand and there are not pipeline connections to take Brownsville product elsewhere. Okay, that's the whole thing. You have to understand that part. That's very important. That's the key. Okay, so now coming back to the point. So why did United States stop building refineries for nearly 50 years? That's the number one question. See, and what happened is this. Let me actually share my slide. So from 1977 to 2001, there was a regulatory freeze. Regulatory freeze was because of all the environmentalists, all the the activists and all that, they do drama more than anything else. And activism, actually, it's a full-time job nowadays. There are lots and lots of activists, they get paid to run their agenda, to run somebody's agenda, their employer's agenda, and whatnot. But anyways, so because of all the climate and everything else, there was a regulatory freeze, so they couldn't do much. Okay, whatever refineries existed, they were just expanding. Then came from 2001 to 2018, there comes the China shock. China joined the World Trade Organization. Once China entered, the basically US decided to move the Western countries altogether. Their whole game plan was to move their manufacturing capacity and export to the Chinese companies or in China and other countries. Okay, that's what they did. And they introduced policies like NAFTA. NAFTA is basically what North American Free Trade Agreement. So with that, what happened? Factories moved abroad, supply chains were globalized, and investment in large scale industrial complex like refineries and all, it just slowed dramatically. Okay, and this is where things get worse. All this was done. Okay, you have to understand this, that all this was done thinking that uh, that with low cost products and all that, they can keep printing the dollar, and dollar is not going to devalue faster, and US markets are not going to see inflation as much. But uh, this thing actually led to another problem, the third one is 2008 to 2024, financialization over capex. So, what exactly does that mean? Post GFC, okay, energy companies prioritize share buybacks and dividends over heavy capex. Okay, so companies used to basically do the buyback, share buyback, or they would and dividends over the capex. Capex meaning that capital expense. So they would just offer your these dividends, or sometimes they would offer um, the stake in the share and all that, right? But now that has changed. Okay, the ExxonMobil, Chevron, Valero returned 100 plus billion dollars to shareholder during the 2010 to 2020. And refinery expansion was capacity optimization, never greenfield build. Okay, so they started to completely, let's just say, instead of investing into building the new infrastructure and doing research to how to optimize this whole thing, right? So that they can build new infrastructure without hurting the environment, they started to basically like, okay, let's uh, pay the money one way or the other and keep doing it, just finance this thing one way or the other, and we are good to go. But that did not pan out very well. But actually, America had a very big problem. Okay, America ran into a big problem back in 90s, late 90s, and that big problem was Bill Clinton problem. Okay, like Bill Clinton problem, you can see in the Epstein files too. But we're not going to talk about all that, right? But that problem was in 90s, that he became president, and the American budget was in surplus. What he did was that his during his election campaign, he gave this whole housing for all slogan. And housing for all slogan meaning that people who can't even afford the housing, people who have bad credit history and all that, he said, yeah, everybody will get it. You should be able to afford the house. That's typical socialist mindset. Now, when that happened, so they removed lots of regulations that were basically financial security check regulations, with which actually lenders actually ensure that they are going to get their money back. But instead, what happened is that uh, they removed all that. And when they removed all that, then this led to the 2008 economic shock, the economic crisis. It built up. And if you look into it, you will find that most of these housing lenders, the mortgage companies, the mortgage providers, the lending companies, they all went bankrupt. Okay, including Lehman Brothers. And when Lehman Brothers, which used to be the largest lender as far as housing market is concerned, when they went bankrupt, it created an economic shock. Now, once the United States actually recovered from the economic shock, and how they recovered from it is by printing the money, by printing the money and taking that money and giving it to the companies, the banks that actually lended that money to make up for their loss. And they said that this is called, we are going to buy, they called it buyback or something like that, or buy bailout package. Sorry, they called it bailout package. Now, why I am telling all this? I'm telling all this is because that actually created even more physical fiscal problems, the monetary problems and dollar devaluation problem. In during the Obama time, if you remember, dollar credit went down from triple A to double A. Okay, that happened. Dollar was devalued. Now, when you devalue the dollar, then of course in your local market things are going to become expensive. That includes drilling, that includes refining, that includes setting up new refineries, hmm, all that. And they forgot about that okay, whatever we are doing, we send all this manufacturing and exports outside, basic, and they thought that they're going to print unlimited dollar. Oh, look, we have the deal, we are good. But that's not going to work. That's not how global economy works. You're printing the dollar is not a perpetual motion machine. Anyways, let's get back to our actual topic. Hmm? So my whole point with this thing was that from 2008 to 2024, we saw 2008 economic crisis. Then economic crisis came in China as well. 2015, China had economic crisis. All right. Then after that, we went into COVID. So between 2008 to 2024, global economy never really got enough time to recover either. And hence the dollar never got enough time to recover either. Okay. And in fact, it went into another shock because of the COVID. Now, when it went into another shock because of COVID, that led to more inflation in the US market and the global market. Okay. So at this point, the Western markets, Western economy is suffering from inflation, stagnant GDPs, and American lawmakers, American president, they all are showing that yeah, GDP is growing and this and that, but actually it's all facade, quite frankly. So that was one of the reasons, that was the reason why did America stop building the refineries for 50 years. All right. Now, what happened during the shale revolution, during the Chinese economic crisis and all that, Americans also decided that okay, let's make our oil, get into the oil market. They figured that let's make our oil global and let's start producing our own oil to cut the oil prices down a little bit and help the global market and whatnot. So they joined the global oil market in 2015. And when they joined the global oil market, they became the largest oil producer. But the problem with that was that they forgot that they have done some serious damage. Why? Because yes, you can drill lots and lots of crude oil, but how are you going to refine it? That was the bottleneck because lots and lots of countries don't have their own refineries and they need refined crude products. So, and that is the real money actually, not the crude. So, sale is not the real money. It's just like selling the iron ore is not the real money. Yes, you do make money, but actually selling the steel is more beneficial than selling the the raw iron, the cast iron, right? Or the iron ore. Same analogy if you look into it, right? Now, so they ran into this bottleneck, and because they ran into this bottleneck, so they started to get into this overstocking problem. Okay, and they were just those oil, all that oil, crude oil is just sitting there. Nobody is using it. All right. So now the question now is that then what? How did India became this whole refining superpower then? See, India became refining superpower because of lots of small things that happen. All right. India started to refine and sell oil and everything. But when your Russia Ukraine war started, hmm, Russia Ukraine war started, and right before the COVID, also, India was basically buying the crude, selling the refined crude products to countries like Nigeria. Nigeria is a crude oil seller, but Nigeria at that time had no refineries, and COVID did not help the situation either. So, so that's when India actually picked up the market. All right. And when India picked up the market, then and China couldn't do much because China itself was dealing with the COVID because that was a ground zero. The so when then came your Russia Ukraine war. And during the Russia Ukraine war, what happened is that India and Russia had a deal. Okay. The deal was that Russians are going to sell cheap crude, cheap crude to India $10 below the Brent and WTI pricing structure. The standard pricing is WTI and Brent, which means that if Brent is selling crude oil at 65, then Russia is going to sell it for 55 to India. And India said, okay. Now, after all that deal was done, Indians started to sell it to Europe, other countries wherever they can. I don't know about the clientele, but when they started to sell all that, then they realized that actually this is a very good business. Considering considering the fact that there is dollar devaluation going on, and because of all the overprinting and all that, and over the period of time dollar devaluation will be there. I'm not saying dollar de-dollarization, you have to understand this, okay? Devaluation, currency devaluation, okay? And then inflation. So all this is going to lead to what? It will lead to a, a higher crude price. Okay, it will lead to a higher crude price, which will make the countries who already have crude and who have the refining capacity even. I'm not talking about other countries who have nothing. I'm talking about countries that have crude, and those are countries that are in the market. If they cannot produce cheap crude, okay, what's going to happen is that India started to sell their refined crude oil at the price of the standard crude oil, standard price of the crude oil. Meaning that if Brent price was 65, so India is selling its 65 on an average, it is right. So some are 75, some are 76 too. So India started to sell the crude oil, refined crude products at 75. So now when India is selling it at 75, the refined crude product, then why would any country want to go and drill, then refine and store or do whatever they want to do with it, right? And that's the strategy. That's the master plan. That's how you capture the market. Now the question is, who else actually can produce that cheap crude? Why do you have to produce cheap crude if you are just so simply go and have a location where you can set up your refinery? And I showed you in that news that clause is saying that setting up the refinery in the Brownsville, Texas, meaning that those things will be meant for exports. Okay, exports. Now, first of all, before we move forward, let's look at the refining numbers here. Okay, so how did India become refining superpower? See, 256 million barrels per day, India's total refining capacity, that is in 2024, 30% plus Jamnagar's share of India's total capacity. Number 4, world's largest refiner using US, China, and Russia. 18 billion pounds annual refined product exports. That's how much they export. Okay. Location Gujarat, capacity 1.36 million, combined two refineries, complexity. Nelson complexity index 21.1. What does that mean? It means that they are expert at refining the complicated crudes. Okay, even Venezuela or any heavy, light, doesn't matter what it is, they will just refine everything and anything. Products: petrol, diesel, jet fuel, naphtha, PX, and built in 1999. Refinery 1, refinery, the refinery 2, 2008. Export supplies Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia, and all that. Reliance industry, so whatever. All right. So now let's look at the map, and then we understand the whole Brownsville game. Okay, and then I will show you what exactly is going on in the Middle East and how that's gonna change the whole entire gameplay. Okay, now let's look at the map. Okay, right here is your beloved Brownsville. Right here, if you look at it, so it's right here, Brownsville. Okay, right here. Now, this Brownsville is going to, what they're going to do is this. From the Brownsville, they are going to see right here, you see the Panama. So from here, they're gonna come to the Panama Canal. They're gonna go come from here, this Panama Canal, then all the way. If you look at it, then you will see that there is whole entire Asian market, right? Asian market. Then from Panama Canal, you can actually sell it here too. Okay, India already has uh, oil exploration and deals with Guyana right here. Okay, Guyana is, where is Guyana? Guyana is right there. See, next to Venezuela, right here. Okay, then India already purchases oil from Venezuela as well. So don't be surprised if Reliance starts to set up its things in these places as well. Okay, now, so they have market here. They are going to take this thing here and start to supply Australia, all these Asian countries. Okay, now with all the problems that are going on here in the Middle East, right here. Okay, this used to be the center of petrodollar. This is where everything happened right here. Okay, all this thing happened right here. Okay, so as the supply chain moves in this direction, these guys, their economy is gonna go downhill. Okay, and this economic downfall is going to do what? It's going to make sure that this whole jihadi and all kinds of things that come with it does not get funded. Okay, now, uh, up until now in this whole the situation was in Middle East favor, here in their favor. Countries, India, China, all these countries used to go there and they were like, hey man, can you give us the oil? They're like, yeah, okay, we don't feel like giving you the oil. So point being that uh in the beginning, things were, balance was on their side, tilted on their side. But now things after this whole thing is over, this war is over, you will see that tides have turned. Now these guys are gonna go and say, hey, can you buy oil from us? India will say that no, you will have to lower your prices. We don't care about how much your GDP is. You need to lower your prices. So, what did I just say? GDP, what? See, you have to understand the pricing structure. Why I'm talking about pricing structure? See, why I'm talking about pricing structure is because that's when India will make the money, or China's refineries will make money. Only if they get the cheaper crude, just like India got it from Russia, right? So, because India's supply chain will change, not just India, but anybody who is doing it. Their supply chain is gonna move in oil supply, energy supply chain is gonna move in this direction. So they will be less reliant on the Middle East, right? So as their supply chain moves in this direction, these guys are going to come here that, hey, can you please buy also? So now the seller is going to chase the customer. Okay. And that's going to change the dynamics. How that's going to change the dynamics? Let me explain you the whole pricing, how oil pricing works. I'm just going to give you a real, in nutshell thing. Okay. There is a thing called break-even cost. Break-even cost is different for different countries. And for Middle Eastern countries, for the most part, break-even cost comes down to 8 to $10 per barrel. What does that mean? It means that it costs them $8 to $10 end to end, basically, to drill a hole and get the oil out of it. Okay, that's how cheap it is for them. Whereas for Russia, also the same thing. So question is, then why do they sell it so expensive? Then they sell it because they add a portion of GDP, and they say they want that oil export to contribute to that GDP, meaning that if Saudis want their GDP to be $2.2 trillion, then they're going to do the calculation as to what should be the oil price, at what price they should sell the oil, and how much they should sell oil in order to make up for all the GDP, whatever GDP they want to reach that target. But now what's going to happen is that when they don't have the customers, all the customers are going to switch to a different supply chain. Then what will happen? Then Saudis are going to say that, okay, we are going to sell you the crude oil at the price of Russian oil. And but some of you may ask question that, hey, so why Saudis cannot just set up their own refinery and use that? Well, they can set it up, but at the end of the day, how they are going to do it cheaper then? That's the question, because they have to ultimately, first thing is they have to first of all find the customers. Second thing is that they will have to expand their refineries, which will cost money. And then third thing is that when you are heavily dependent on your crude oil or anything energy exports to build up your GDP, then your GDP is not going to improve regardless. So why not just cut these costs, unnecessary cost in building refineries and all, just give it to somebody and have something from them in exchange and have some trade, and you're good to go. That's why. Okay. And after Iran mess is over, you will see that the whole entire energy trading architecture is going to change. All right. Along with that will the US influence in the Middle East, and US knows it. Okay, US knows that US influence is going to change because this was supposed to happen by design. So now the question is that why US is building refineries again, and I talked about this little bit, that they were producing crude, then now they want to really, but they were not refining it because they had no refineries, so they reached a bottleneck. Now they want to basically get back into the oil market. And only reason you want to get into the oil market is when you know that your old order is done. You're not going to use that petrodollar world order anymore. So how do you manage all that? How do you make up for all that? You make up for all that by selling your own thing. That's how you do it. And you sell it cheaper. You sell it so cheap that nobody else even thinks about refining it or even producing it. They will just simply they will find it easier just to buy the crude rather than do anything else. That's how it's gonna play out. I mean, the energy security, the energy purchase, the whole entire supply chain is going to shift towards US and Canada and the Arctic and the Russians. That's how it's going to play out. Look at it. Let me show it to you. And this is by design, okay? Anybody who thinks that this is not by design and Russia-Ukraine war is not happening by design, believe me, you are living in a whole another dream world, okay? This is not a fairy tale. This was supposed to happen. There is a problem. Why that is, I will explain it to you just now. But look at this, okay? Right here. US, India has investments in Venezuela. India has investments in Guyana. They have investments in Bolivia as well. Now imagine this: refineries here, refineries here, refineries here, refineries here. This is just the start. This is just the beginning, okay? What do you think is going to happen? Energy, right, all over the place. This is why whole entire Indo-Pacific was being secured all along. This is Indo-Pacific right here, okay? This is Indo-Pacific, okay? All right, hold on a second. Let me show you. That's Indo-Pacific right here. As far as shipping lane is concerned, this right here forms the whole entire Indian Ocean region, okay? Up to Suez Canal, Gulf of Aden and all that right here, okay? And from this point on, it becomes Indo-Pacific. That's what the whole idea is, the Indo-Pacific security and all that. Why do you think they're dying for Indo-Pacific security? Otherwise, why would the US care about the US Indo-Pacific security? Unless they had some other plans. Now, the plan, why all this plan is, okay, and this is just my theory. My theory says that when the Middle East actually grew with the Western money, then they started to invest that money or put that money into lots and lots of bad things. Now, there are certain countries who do that. Bad things meaning jihadis and all that we see nowadays all over the place, right? UK, whether it is US, UK, the dirty protests and all that, and whether it is Saudi, whether it is Iranians and all that. Iranians had no money, but they had their own proxies in that region. Whereas Saudis and all, they were using their proxies, all these mosques, all that setup basically was there. All that they were using, all that to their advantage to alter the whole entire region, even the way of life by using all these techniques. And so at this point, there is a lobby, the lobby that realized that that certain folks of certain community are not safe, even in the United States. They started to see that problem. Now, then they started to see that problem, so they figured that they need to take the matter in their own hands. What do? You go after the most powerful country in that region, that is Iran. And by design, you know that when you bomb Iran, then Iran is going to hit others. And you continue to hit Iran until Iran goes and destroys everyone else. And if Iran doesn't do it, then you do it and just blame it on Iran. Why you are doing it? Because if you don't do it, if you don't make these countries economically weaker, then this problem is only going to grow. That was the whole thought process. Okay. And hence now we are here. Okay. And then there was other problem as well, that dollar actually overstayed its welcome. The whole petrodollar system also overstayed its welcome, because petrodollar was the root of all evils that were happening behind the scenes. Okay. So that's the whole picture in nutshell. I don't want to take too much time here, right? Now let's look at the refinery gap. So this is what it is. Like we talked about, right? Why the United States building refineries again. The refinery is being built again is because of this. In 1982, US had 301 refineries. 1990, 205, and by 2024 there are only 129 refineries left. That's a 50% drop. Okay. So now the question is, what why does United States actually need India for this project? Why US needs India for this project? Let's look at what United States brings and what India brings to this whole thing. US was largest crude oil output, then deep capital markets, of course, Gulf Coast export infrastructure, Corpus Christi, Houston ship, and all that, right? ITAR regulatory framework that is rock solid, partner state privileges for India. US Treasury sanctions architecture, pricing power over rivals, meaning that prices will be lowered. Now, for what India brings, so India mega refinery engineering, Jamna, this, then Nelson complexity, meaning that India's refineries can actually refine all kinds of complicated crudes. Then operational workforce pipeline, then Indo-Pacific distribution reach, geopolitical neutrality. Okay, Indo-Pacific distribution reach. This is the key part here. You have to understand that, and that's what I was talking about earlier. The supply chain shift. Okay, that will be the perfect safest supply chain. Nobody has to deal with lots of other things. Now I'm only that how safe all that is and how efficient all that is, only time will tell. But uh, but shorter supply chains are always better and than the longer supply chains. But if you have to capture the global market, then what do? You strategically place your refineries in the regions where there are customers and with the shorter supply chains, and you start providing them everything. All you have to do is, under the condition all this, what Reliance will do? Reliance will sell that oil in what? Dollar. Yes, petrodollar will be gone from the Middle East and all that, but US will create its own dollar structure. That's what it is going on right now. So India will take the crude from Russia, India will take crude from US, and then India is going to sell all that crude in dollar to European Union, then other countries, Asia, here and there. What do you think is going to happen? Dollar will actually grow its influence in the market. Not just grow the influence, but actually it may not grow or whatnot, but at least it's gonna be stable. So anyone who thinks that de-dollarization is going to happen or anytime soon or any such thing, I can assure you that they cannot even count five countries. People who say de-dollarization is happening, I mean, you go on any YouTube channel or anywhere, everyone is they de-dollarization. Okay, countries are losing dollar, BRICS currency is coming, and this and that. Maybe someday in one of those, blue moon days, I don't know. But they cannot count five countries. Five countries on hand, just like that. Five countries that have 90% of their trade switched to non-dollar denomination currency. Five countries. I'm not talking about 100, 200 countries or complete de-dollarization. They cannot count five countries. And now I'm not counting the countries that don't even have dollar. Okay, I'm not counting Zambia or some random African country. They have their own problems. So, but I'm talking about countries that are on purpose getting rid of the dollar. There are not even five countries. You cannot count five countries that have their trade going on. 90% of their trade is going in non-dollar denomination currency. Not even five countries, let alone de-dollarization. China and Russia are the largest proponent of the de-dollarization. Look at China. China's trade with the United States is $600 billion per year. So, so anybody who says all that, I don't know what to tell them. But that's where things are. All right. So, and then there are lots of other people who say that okay, US economy is going to crash, DS done. Yes, dominance in the Middle East will be done. That's fine, fair enough. Yes, fair argument. And everybody knows sooner or later it had to end because that region was too volatile anyways. But uh, but does that mean that it is over? No, that's the new supply chain right there. Arctic is the new Middle East, actually, if you ask me. Arctic is the new Middle East. Canada has already declared itself as the energy superpower. Go figure. And they are true. That's true to an extent. Okay. So where do you think this whole thing is headed? All right. So the supply chain will be built, and that's like emerging US India energy corridor, Permian Basin, Brownsville refinery hub. Then it's gonna go to Jamnagar distribution or wherever they want to distribute. Okay, so that's how it's gonna play out. So how this will slow down the de-dollarization? Yes, petrodollar is under pressure. Yes, uh, all that is there. But when US and India and Russia, all these countries, they start to work together, the market is not gonna be about the crude, okay, anymore. Oil market is going to switch from directly selling the crude to refined crude product selling. Why? Because then you're going to sell what you want to sell, and your buyer will be like, okay, I will buy what I want to buy. Simply because selling the crude has too much going on with it, as we have seen for past 20, 30 years or 40 years. Simply because that's too much security guarantees and this and that. Security guarantees with supply chain security will still be needed. Okay. But putting the refined crude products in the market rather than the crude, that actually gives the opportunity for other countries the option. Think about it. Okay. It gives option for other countries to build their own refineries and buy crude, cheap crude from somewhere and sell it to the world. Meaning that, yes, India may take over the market, may China may take over the market, but anybody who thinks that in the multipolar world, oil market can be monopolized like that, that's not going to happen either. All right. So what will happen? What will happen is that in a multipolar world, you will see multiple oil refineries by multiple countries that can actually sell and refine, have the capacity. And let's say tomorrow, if China decides that okay, we are going to cut the supply and this and that, then there will be other countries who will be like, okay, all right, bye, we don't know you, and refining will shift. That is a lot safer way than actually having the crude, selling the crude. Why? Because crude is under the ground. You cannot move the ground to some other country, right? That's why. So this is gonna be the multipolar refining, or I would say multilateral refining more so than multipolar refining. Multilateralism is linked to the institutions. Multipolarity is about power. Okay, we'll talk about that some other time. But for now, that's where the world is headed. All right, as far as energy supply chain is considered. Okay, so this is it for this video, guys. I hope you learned something. I hope you liked the video. Please do like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys in another video. Take care.